We launch in the US tomorrow. In doing so, we're going in a completely full price proposition, which is very different for us. So we rely heavily on our outlet business model, which is incredible. But in doing so, you have to nurture the outlet side of trading and the full price, your trend-led and style seasonality. But actually being able to launch in a new market as a completely fresh brand with a full price propositioning is really impactful.
You're listening to Inside Commerce, a weekly e-com strategy, technology and CX focused podcast hosted by experienced digital consultants and replatform specialists James Gedd and Paul Rogers. Get insights into e-com strategy, leading brands, hear from industry thought leaders and leading tech vendors with practical advice to help you improve your online CX.
Hi everyone, and thanks for joining us on the Inside Commerce podcast, sponsored by Shopify. More on them later. Today I'm joined by Ben and Lana from Osprey London, who I've known Ben for a long time, and Lana I spoke to a lot over the last year. And they're going to talk to us about their recent replatforming project to Centra and also kind of evolution of their digital flagship online store. So do you guys mind giving us a bit of an intro initially, like to your roles and also Osprey London?
Absolutely.
Maybe
yeah.
Definitely. Awesome. So my name's Lana. I'm head of marketing at Osprey London. I've been here for just under 2 years now and very much came in to kind of look at everything brand and content, and obviously the world of marketing, which is extremely broad, both in store and online. But it's been great coming in because it's such a great, heritage brand that's been around since 1980, and we're founder led, and they're very much in the company every day. And they built this amazing kind of recognition predominantly from physical stores and just needed to translate that in a digital space really. So very much came in to do that, and it has been really, really exciting.
Yeah, and so I'm Ben, head of e-commerce at Osprey London, joined in 2017 just as we were launching Magento 2 cloud site. So been on Magento, or had been on Magento quite a long time. The role has expanded since I joined as ecom manager, and now I look after all the business systems for the business as well, whether that's in-store POS or payment systems, all of those sort of things, warehouse management systems. We've been on a bit of a journey, and Centra has been, and that implementation of Centra has been the sort of the top, or the sort of the pinnacle of that project. I've been looking at it from a technical point of view, whereas Lana's been looking at it from a brand point of view.
Perfect. So I'll ask the first question. So as you say, you were on Magento for quite a long time. I remember actually when you first joined and around the time you went live, and we spoke quite a lot about Klaviyo at the time. But yeah, you were really early to cloud, but you'd been on the platform for a long time. Platform was relatively stable. What made you decide to move away from Magento, and what were kind of the limitations you were facing as a business? So maybe starting with you, Ben, talking about more of the kind of e-com side, and then Lana, you can talk a bit more about the front end and kind of how you were presenting the brand.
Yeah, I think with Magento being that sort of platform that we've been building on for almost 7 years, there was a lot of sort of technical overhead that we had sort of tried to limit, but there was a lot of sort of stuff built on other things. And speed of development was tricky. Obviously working with Magento, there was sort of different layers of that we had to sort of work development through. So everything was taking a massive amount of time. We'd never really as well got the integration piece right. We had sort of tried to make it work, but it was always very tricky for us to go back and try and fix those sort of things. So we were also getting to the end of a sort of a billing cycle as well with Magento. So we always sort of have those questions coming up. And we were looking at other potential, sort of keeping Magento and maybe doing something with Hoover or something like that. But yeah, I think from my perspective, then Lana coming in, there was a massive catalyst to actually look at this completely fresh rather than trying to make Magento work for us.
Yeah, so I think when I came in, I remember actually messaging Ben. I was like, I hate the banner. Can we change it? I want to do something like this. I kind of did a very rough mock-up in Figma, and then had the conversation, and Ben was like, okay, this is going to take about 3 months. And then that was probably the starter as to potentially, Magento is not the right fit for us. And I came from a Shopify background anyway. So I was very used to kind of quick implementation, quick design, and then kind of everything's done in about a week. So that started off all the conversations. And then when we actually started looking at it at a bit bigger project, I really came in and wanting to do a brand piece anyway. So it kind of came hand in hand to do that web redesign and complete migration as well. So that was kind of why we kicked things off.
Yeah, I think all our retainer really, or the work that we were doing with the dev agency with Magento, was just getting sucked up by upgrades and that sort of thing. There's very little room to then push new development or design. The website was very transactional. It did a job. It was stable, as you said, but we weren't. Yeah, we were not pushing things along at all.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And that kind of takes us nicely on to the next piece. So like overall, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but what were the kind of overall business goals going into the project? And what was kind of the primary rationale from a business case perspective? Because obviously it wasn't a lot of replatforming projects and more about kind of change or technology change, whereas this was a bit more of a kind of revolution of kind of how you're like thinking about the website.
Yeah. So for me, it was very much about brand and storytelling. Osprey London is a heritage brand, it's a household name, but from everything that had been done in the past. So wanted to be able to kind of be at the forefront of that again and be kind of best in class in terms of whether it's your presentation of your products and kind of describing it on the PDP or the PLP, everything down to like our brand universe. Very much wanted it to be this immersive world that you would come into and really experience exactly who the brand is and who they always have been, just had to kind of reconnect that in like a digital space. And together with that, obviously, we have huge plans in terms of internationalization and like building out the connection between physical and online, and it very much just being our digital flagship store. We can kind of base everything around and really grow the business out from there.
Yeah, and from me, my perspective, much more technical in terms of those integrations. There's absolutely massive point-to-point integrations that we were utilizing, actually bringing in an integration layer that will, and as for the wider business as well, so interacting with the store systems, interacting with the warehouse systems as well, was really important for us. The speed of development, I think, as going back to that business case that you talk about, there was, we looked at sort of the cost of ownership of Centra or whatever other platform we were looking at against Magento, and then what we could actually achieve for pretty much similar cost was a massive sort of positive for us.
Perfect. And then I do tend to do this, and I always say I won't, but like kind of sub question that wasn't in the original question that I sent over. But you talked a bit about the integrations, and I know you work with Frogstack, who we've worked with a number of other clients. And I guess one of the things with Centra, like obviously we're massive fans of Centra, James and I, but they don't have like the same volume as some of the other like players, I guess. And I think it was Frogstack's kind of first project with Centra. Like, how did that side go? Like, how did you find kind of working with Centra's APIs? It sounds like that was positive.
Yeah, it was definitely a big concern for us, or a big risk point for us, because it was pretty much there first. I think there was an investment from the agency Grebban and Centra to make it work, because they wanted a good integration partner. Our stack with sort of NetSuite and C2 is not unusual. You see that quite often. So actually having an integration partner that had done that, so there was definitely a level of support. But overall, Frogstack have been very impressed with the APIs and the integration opportunities with Centra and how it's structured. And it was actually relatively smooth. For me, it was the first thing that we were kicking off was that integration piece, even before we were sort of thinking about how the website looked or anything like that. So, and I've seen, a lot of projects quite often will fail that way because you're not sort of prioritizing the integration work. And I think that goes back actually to us being able to work in quite separate streams, me very focused on that technical thing and you focused on the front end piece, enabled us to work concurrently and actually accelerate that.
What do Mattel, Victoria Beckham, Sennheiser, and Glossier all have in common? They power their businesses with Shopify. Shopify is the most innovative and scaled commerce platform on the planet. It also happens to have the best converting checkout on the planet. Shopify, powering the future of enterprise commerce. Find out more at shopify.com/enterprise.
Perfect. And we'll probably come on to that a little bit later as well when we start to talk more in depth about Centra. So the next question, which will kind of move us a little bit along towards that. So when you started evaluating different platform options, how did you approach that? And kind of what made you end up going down the Centra route? And how important was the kind of, I think a lot of people reference the kind of cultural side of Centra, and they're obviously all great people and really nice to work with, and their ecosystem. Like, how important were they to you guys?
Yeah, so I think we did probably what anyone would do, and you have a look and you're like, okay, these are the top ones. So you've got Shopify, and then there's Ecommerce, and was there another one that we had left?
Well, we were looking at reskinning Magento.
Oh yeah, and reskinning Magento, which was never going to happen, but Ben was trying to push it for a while. And actually, when we then started talking to a lot more people and also different web design agencies, they were the ones that started to bring up Centra. And I personally hadn't actually heard of it before. But since we were doing this entire piece of kind of looking at all of the options, it just made sense to have a look at it as well, and did a very much kind of like an in-depth, deep dive into all of them, spoke to all of the agencies, spoke to brands that had worked with all of them as well. And then just did a very, very in-depth, probably analysis of all the options.
So I'd first heard of Centra back in 2022 when we were changing our point of sale system to C2. Which was part of the NetSuite implementation, because we had to change our points of sale at that point. But we didn't necessarily think it was a realistic option for us until we met Grebban, and that sort of agency part of the puzzle came in as well. I think we did not have a great sales process with Shopify. Very much felt like a number part of that sort of pipeline. And that wasn't great. And we felt, and you talk about culture, actually working with a company that was listening to us and actually being able to affect the direction of travel, which we're very much seeing now, which is brilliant, has been really valuable to us.
Yeah, and we very much kind of narrowed it down quite quickly to Shopify and Centra, as those two made the most sense for us, just in terms of business case, and then also in terms of achievables, what we actually wanted to do today and then tomorrow, and obviously beyond with Osprey London. But it's funny, actually, with Grebban, we're the only agency that we spoke to that really pushed Centra together with Shopify. It was never Shopify is the end all be all. There is also this other option, Centra, that could be a complete headache for you. We haven't really done an integration. We haven't done that many. It only exists in kind of the Scandi world. They approach them both very equally at the same space or at the same time. And actually through doing that and then also interacting with Centra and Shopify independently was then how we were able to probably fill in the gaps and realize that it was the best decision for us. And with Magento, we had, it's probably one of your biggest hiccups with Shopify anyway, when we were doing the process, is that you would have to plug in all of these apps and not have a ton of control and have this one option for checkout. And it was very much like this structured way of working that with Magento was quite different. And actually with Centra, you have the complete flexibility of headless commerce that probably wasn't as scary for us because we were in a way kind of already doing it. Whereas if you had already been pre-built into the way of working within a Shopify kind of closed circuit, I can understand why that could be quite intimidating for some people.
Yeah. Something I hate. I mean, I thought we were going to go with Shopify when we started the process.
Yeah. I was pushing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But something I hate the Shopify checkout. I always think we're trying to tell a brand story and then you immediately land on that checkout. I think that sort of breaks the spell. So yeah, that's sort of...
That is always an interesting discussion point. I feel like we could do a whole episode on that, and a lot of debate around the kind of performance, bottom of funnel kind of side to Shopify's checkout. But we've worked with a couple of like super high-end luxury brands, and that can be a real sticking point. So yeah, interested. We won't go into that now because I feel like we could use the rest of the episode on that for sure. So,
Yeah.
So you just mentioned Headless, and I think that's probably like a big piece of this episode story. I think a lot of people associate Headless with like big engineering teams, you know, like larger businesses and very complex businesses as well, maybe with, or like not necessarily very complex, but with some level of complexity on the front end. Whereas the other side to it is more the kind of freedom from a creative perspective. How have you found kind of going into that world as a relatively small team? And you talked a bit around kind of, you know, how you use the retainer hours with Magento. How have you found that side with, the Headless world?
Yeah, I think as going back to the sort of the selection process as well, Shopify and Headless was not an option in our budget. And I think when we spoke to Grebban, they are confused why British companies seem to be
so anti.
Intimidated. Because I think with the businesses that they work in the Nordics, quite often they will be with a headless setup, and it's it was interesting, and their confidence in that being a possibility for us was sort of eye-opening, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a lot more refreshing. I think having someone come in and be like, you can do anything you want, and then just being able to go ahead and build it and have the trust and also the support of your platform, Centra, backing you and being like, yeah, you want to build this 100%, we'll work with you and we'll be able to do this for you, is actually so refreshing. It's something that you're not really able to do in a lot of other places. And I think maybe just reframing the way that you talk about that, and just that it is incredibly approachable. And for a heritage British brand, it's really what set it apart, because we are obviously incredibly unique and we want that to come across online as well. And you're able to do that completely with Headless, and it didn't take too much.
No, like for example, like the way you now work with content in Storyblok is completely different to how we used to do it in Magento. And I don't really get involved in that anymore. The marketing team can do all of that themselves. Yeah, which is actually amazing. Such a game changer for us. But I mean, there are, like, in terms of drawbacks, I think there's been a bit of a learning curve for us in terms of if there's a problem, who do you speak to? Which end of the setup are you talking to, or is it an integration issue? So that is a downside, but I think that will be that has been front weighted to the initial part of the project, and that has all sort of smoothed out now, and we know who to show to.
And the way that it works for us as well is because Grebban are absolutely amazing, and they kind of built obviously all of these templates and everything and really immersed themselves in who we wanted to be and how we wanted to present. So they came in, learned all about us. In this process as well, we also were redoing our brand guidelines, our brand book, and really kind of reconnecting exactly who we want to be. So when we do launch, it is with our best foot forward. And they interpreted all of that absolutely brilliantly. And they've taken all of our USPs and kind of built them out into different profiles and different ways that we're able to communicate that online. And then they've been able to work directly with their own developers to kind of build that out within Centra. In terms of a brand point of view, we just had to learn the systems and be taught exactly, this is how you do this, and then this is how you go and plug this in, whether it is on our content platform like Storyblok, or if it is in Depict, which is our merchandising system, and then also in Centra. From my perspective, we are doing complete end-to-end upload of product from our ERP right the way through to the platform, putting all of the content, and then merchandising and managing it on site. So it's completely changed the way that we work internally, but it also allows you to then focus a lot more on systems and the more technical aspects that I won't ever touch, which is good.
Yeah.
I do think also that, we've worked with a lot of brands that have gone down a route that is headless, and I do think that Grebban and Centra, like those two combined, definitely is really compelling in terms of, I think Grebban obviously super strong as an agency, but they're also very reasonable in terms of costs, I would say. And they've got the volume of Headless Centra builds to be able to have some level of like economies of scale, and they've kind of got their accelerator. And then I think the kind of Storyblok and Centra piece also kind of reduces some of those impacts that you'd probably get if you were on a slightly less mature platform with maybe less kind of native functionality and a less kind of mature connector into the CMS, stuff like that. So I do feel like, it's good that you've kind of brought those partners together that can definitely make it a bit easy or a bit more efficient in that kind of headless world. So going into this project, obviously, managing the scope of a replatforming project is difficult for all parties. And like, particularly from a brand perspective, it's an opportunity where you've presumably put together a CapEx budget and you want to get as much as possible out of that budget, and as much value from the project. And you want all the bells and whistles and everything else. But equally, it's obviously a big change for the business and all of the kind of major teams and stakeholders in the business. How did you prioritize? How did you go into the project in terms of saying, this is what we're going to launch with? I don't know how you approached it from like an MVP versus, kind of much broader project, but how did you approach that side?
Yeah, well, we had quite a, so from the beginning of the project, and this is including the rebrand or the brand work as well that we were doing, we had a 6-month timeline to launch the project. And that was sort of semi-self-imposed, but we wanted to realize the value of the new platform for our busiest period, so November and December. So we kicked everything off in March. We were aiming to go live, and we delayed by 1 day because we thought it'd be better to launch on a Wednesday rather than a Tuesday. So we could have actually launched earlier, but we were bang on time in terms of that 6-month timeline. But I think it was really important that we very much focused on the things that we absolutely had to have. During the process, the implementation process, we designed all the extra elements. Everything was designed that is then sort of coming through at the moment. So we sort of over-designed everything, made sure everything was there. So as we sort of phased that implementation, which is ongoing this year as well, everything was already done in terms of that design piece.
Yeah. So in terms of priorities, obviously getting it live, it's functional, it's shoppable, it is incredibly fast. We want to boost conversion. We have like certain elements of upsell and cross-sell online. But probably the next bits that are coming soon, which is a really nice way of working, is actually doing it in phases. So we're working on phase 2 at the moment, and that's bringing in our could-haves for launch, but they were not must-haves. So we're working on like a interactive product finder and like a shuffle button and lots of other fun brand elements that will bring to life the storytelling that I'm super passionate about, but weren't 100% kind of absolutely needed to go live. So it's, in terms of priorities, it was like, okay, we need to be live in time for peak. Now we're doing a next step in terms of like refining certain elements and also being able to see, all right, we've been live for 6 months now, 7 months.
No less.
Anyway, since October last year. And but and improving what we have already done, which is also great.
Yeah, and I think and that's not just in terms of the sort of user experience on the front end of the site as well. With like Ingrid, we went live with just the front end piece. We knew the most complex integrations were going to be the transport management and the returns piece there, but new functionality coming as well. So that's pretty much launching this week. The returns part of that. So being realistic with what we could achieve from the back end piece as well, it's really important. And selling it in that time frame was also really important because we knew how fast we could kind of get something live with Shopify. Is that in order to really sell the case of Centra and why we thought it was the best decision, we had to have kind of similar SMART goals as well.
Makes sense. We'll come on to Ingrid a little bit in a second. International. So I know that you guys sell in other markets, and I believe it's a really important part of your kind of growth strategy. How big a part of the project was that, and how has Centra kind of enabled you to meet some of those requirements?
Yeah, so on the Magento site, we were using Globally, so the Globally plugin, and send internationally, which in some ways is brilliant. You access to hundreds of countries, but you have you don't have a huge amount of control. The version we were on, you didn't have a huge amount of control over product range or content or anything like that. So as part of that decision process, the ability to spin up new international sites was absolutely key there. We were about to launch. I think as well with Globally, it's very easy to just let it run, and you don't necessarily focus on a market and try and grow a particular market. We've got loads of data from Globally in terms of where our customers are, where that potential is. But we wanted to really focus on a market, or even a small part of a market, and really push that and see what we could achieve with that rather than just let it run.
Yeah, it's a lot more of a considered approach. So we launch in the US tomorrow.
Yep.
And in doing so, we're going in a completely full price proposition, which is very different for us. So we rely heavily on our outlet business model, which is incredible. But in doing so, you kind of have to nurture the outlet side of really trading, and the full price, kind of your trend-led and style seasonality. But actually being able to launch in a new market as a completely fresh brand with a full price propositioning is really impactful. So we have different content. We've got completely, different products that will be on there, different navigation, a completely different way that people will be able to kind of shop and interact with us. But also coupled with the fact that a month or two ago, we've launched with a huge wholesale partner. So actually doing them in tandem will be really great.
Lovely. And then in terms of I guess going back to the tech stack a little bit. So you've mentioned Depict, you've mentioned Ingrid, and I might combine the next two questions a little bit with Ingrid. You've mentioned C2, which I think you already had. Can you just talk us through kind of how you approach the tech stack, and I guess whether you did the standard thing of embracing, so I just cancel that call. Whether you did the kind of standard thing of embracing the Swedish tech mafia, as they call them. And like the impact that some of those solutions have had on the business.
We definitely did, yes.
I don't think we did it on purpose.
No, but I think going back to Grebban and like the amount of expertise they've had in Centra implementations, like why would we know any better to say, no, this would work better with Centra? So we obviously spoke to a lot of their existing partners and existing brands that use the tech stack that they suggested, and also looked at different alternatives. But if you're able to see a use case where they work brilliantly kind of online, in store, and everything in between, then we have a lot of trust in all of those different platforms and the way that they interact with each other. I like
Depict, for example, is the only, so there's been a game changer in terms of the merchandising that we have to do in categories. It's the only merchandising platform that I've seen that can work in a way that we need to, where it actually makes the categories look curated. And there's still elements of some manual work there, but that is the best I've ever seen.
Yeah.
They're working with them for a reason as well.
Yeah.
But, having to evaluate those as well. I think when we started all the because we do not have a single retail or business system left over from March 2023. Every single system, payment, BI, marketing, absolutely every single system has been changed over in the past couple of years. And we knew the first two pieces of that puzzle, which were NetSuite and C2. And we knew the systems that we wanted to bring in, but we weren't necessarily decided on that, because things can change, systems can get better, systems can get worse. So we've been flexible since that, because we would have expected to be on Shopify at this point.
Yeah, but there are other things. I guess we're not completely Swedish. So Storyblok obviously isn't. And also before we made the decision to go to Centra, and before we did the replatforming, we initially did our CRM. So we're with Ametria. and actually made the decision to stay on there because we're really happy with it and built that migration. Well, I didn't, Ben and Frogstack built that kind of integration from scratch. So there were certain elements that we wanted to keep or wanted to really push for because they work better, but definitely lent into the Swedish element.
Yeah.
Perfect. And then we've kind of already touched on this, and obviously there's already been quite a lot of positive sentiment towards Grebban. But yeah, how did you find that experience, and like what were some of the pros of working with those guys?
Yeah, I think the biggest one for me is the approach to sort of maintenance and bug fixing. Whereas we come from a world where almost every pound was sucked up by that sort of element. It is complete Grebban sort of approach those bugs not as business as usual, but as exceptions. We're able to get things fixed in days rather than months. And it doesn't sort of suck up our development and creative retainer. That's you keep that's kind of ring fenced. The maintenance part is a tiny part of our small percentage of the amount of money that we spend with Grebban. But also it's like the adaptability in terms of I wouldn't say things work within structure, but there's not that rigid, time-consuming process that there used to be with Magento. It's been a complete breath of fresh air for me.
Yeah, and also we were looking for a long-term partner that will stay with hopefully for years. And the people were really, really important. So, you want to have fun with who you're working with and really enjoy what you're doing. And they are really invested in the brand, really enjoy working with us, I hope, as well. And within that, you're then able to achieve a lot more than probably if it was a lot more like very rigid and quite opposite. Yeah, can't say the word. Know what I mean?
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think that makes sense. A final question. So you've obviously, gone through this project. You've got the new tech stack. You've ticked loads of stuff off over the last, 5 months since launch, but, from the start of the project. What's next for the business? Like, what are your priorities from a roadmap in kind of, next 12 months perspective?
Yeah, I think we've come from that sort of initial implementation where everything had to have a very strict and rigid business case in terms of that return on investment that we're getting. So this year we're sort of separating that slightly. We've got some really good stuff to do with sort of the brand, which I'm sort of stealing your thunder here actually.
Go for it.
Some really good stuff with the brand that is actually, we don't have a financial business case for it. We're just doing it because it'd be interesting for the customer, and it'll be just some interesting stuff that we're going to get on the site, which I'm really.
Yeah, and also when we go into new markets, it will help solidify who Osprey London are and hopefully help build loyal customers from that as well. Yeah. So loyalty is huge. We're building that out on our own. We're not going with a partner or anything. We kind of want something that is completely custom and makes sense for us. We are doing a lot of work with in-store as well. So obviously with Ingrid, getting that omni-channel piece right and getting a lot of the kind of the different flows set up in the way that works for us. And then obviously international is massive. So I think all of them tie in really well together, but there are a lot of really exciting projects coming along. And then together with that, we're only going to continue improving what's already live as well, which is fun.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for talking us through that. I think it's, the site looks great. It's a really cool project and really nice kind of case study for all of the partners involved. And then I guess if anyone wanted to kind of ask you any questions, what's the best way to get in touch with you? Send me a message on LinkedIn. I'm normally quite good at getting back to people. So that's me, but you don't use LinkedIn, do you?
Hey.
By contact.
You can message me on LinkedIn because nobody else does. So
okay. Perfect. We'll appreciate you guys coming on. Thanks everyone for listening as always. And if you've got any comments or any feedback, just message James or I, and please like the episode. I think that's what we usually say. And we'll see you next time.
You're listening to the Inside Commerce podcast hosted by experienced consultants James Gerd and Paul Rogers. Inside Commerce is your fast track to digital knowledge, featuring interviews with leading e-commerce retailers, industry thought leaders, and the C-suite of key tech companies to explore the latest in digital strategy, customer experience, and tech. discover what the latest trends really mean, and get practical advice based on experience to help fine-tune your e-com strategy and tech stack. Follow us on LinkedIn and reach out to James or Paul if you'd like to discuss an e-commerce project. We hope you enjoy the latest episode.